Hey there, I just wanted to take a second to say thank you so much for watching this episode of The Shepherd Station. If you feel this has added some value to your life, it would mean so much to us if you would share this episode with someone else. It helps us so much when you do that. It would go a long way in supporting our mission to help men become better fathers, husbands, and leaders. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and give us a like. If you're listening to us through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to podcasts, follow us, leave us a review, and let us know how we're doing. We want to hear from you. All right, that's all I've got. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Shepherd Station. We are at the Stockyard at 24 East Church Street in Headland. Come by and see us. Great food, great place to hang out, good people to talk to. If you can't come see us, go see Zach and Destiny at Mural City Coffee. That's where we get all our coffee. They roast it in-house. Great place to hang out. It's in downtown Dothan on, I believe it's South Foster Street, yeah.
South.
As always, I'm Eric Duhame. I'm always Eric Duhame. With me, there's one for the blooper reel.
There you go. Yeah. I'm always Eric.
Yep, I'm always Eric Duhame. With me is Thomas Brown and Andy Hughes, as always. And we've got a really good show for you today because we have a special guest again in our, I guess, call it a studio. Bobby Blankenship.
Yeah.
Long-time law enforcement officer. Ended up working for A Post before you actually retired fully, right?
Yes.
And it's got a really good story.
Kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So with that, let's just kick things off.
And Bobby's fully retired now.
Well, Bobby is not working in law enforcement
anymore, right? Yeah.
And Bobby has started talking in the third person.
Yeah. I like this.
And none of us. I don't know how anybody can be fully retired. I just really don't know how anybody can absolutely do nothing myself. Because you work from home, I work from home, and the stuff that I do, and I still miss having somewhere to be. At least a couple of days a week, anyway. You know,
absolutely.
Having a time to be somewhere and show up at the station or at the office, and
then making sure that you've put out certain time every day to where you can work on whatever project you're working on is something in itself that is like, okay, am I going to do it today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bobby, tell us.
That's nice.
To get started, and myself and Eric pretty much know most of your law enforcement career anyway. But tell us a little bit about how you got started in law enforcement. What was your inspiration to get started in law enforcement? And just kind of in 5 minutes or so, just kind of map out your career for us.
Well, and actually, my career started when I was a teenager in Abbeville, Alabama. I grew up there. All of us knew I was going to be involved in law enforcement one way or the other. We didn't know on which side, but one way or the other, we knew I was going to be involved in law enforcement.
Either as a resident of the state or a cop of the state.
Cop or con.
One of the two.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I had several of the old cops up there would sit there and talk to us and befriend us. And I worked at a mechanic shop, and they would come over and do some mechanicing on stuff with us. And got to be good friends with them. And at nighttime, when they would be doing their walking checks of buildings in the square there in Abbeville, well, lo and behold, first thing I would do a lot of times would be go join them, especially in the summer, and just do walk-arounds. Mm-hmm. So, you had that first little bit that happened. And then I had a father-in-law decided, he said, "Are you tired of working construction yet?" I said, "Well, no, not yet." He says, "I can get you on with the city of Ozark." And I finally thought about it after working construction for 2 or 3 years in the rain and the cold and everything else, and decided, why not? I've got a brand new baby. I've got a wife. Let's go see what happens.
So you decided to stop working construction in the rain and the cold and go out and direct traffic in the rain and the cold and stuff like that, right?
That would be the correct thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yes,
all right.
Worked out well.
Yeah. It did.
And 25 years later, I retired from there as a captain over special operations.
Right.
Throughout my career with Ozark, I did a little bit of everything, commercial vehicles, interdiction, traffic homicide, did a FTO program, did our training issues, which is where I specialized later on throughout my career, was in the training division, and I did honor guards and such as that. So they kept me busy for years and years until it was finally time to go find greener pastures somewhere else after Chief Spivey retired.
Yeah. So you worked for only 2 chiefs then?
I worked for two chiefs of Ozark now.
Yeah, Chief Benefield and Chief Spivey.
That is correct.
Right.
Well, let me rephrase that. There was a third chief that I was there for about a month and a half.
Okay, yeah.
And that was
Marlos Walker.
right?
And
I thought you worked for him a little bit longer.
at the most was 3 months. I stayed long enough to see, in my opinion, how things were going to go.
Yeah.
And I decided after that, I'd already heard about a chief's job coming open, and decided to go be a chief at the Dothan Airport Police Department. I stayed there for 6 years
Right.
until I was recruited to go to Alabama Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. And I stayed there for my last year and a half as an investigator.
One thing I can tell is that Chief Spivey didn't dress you before you came here this morning.
No, he did not.
Yeah, because Tony Spivey is a spiffy dresser now. That man, I never saw him when he wasn't in a really nice suit with all the accoutrements and everything was
Accoutrements.
just
Accoutrements,
right.
I'm gonna have to look that
That
word up.
was a
Andy.
word.
You
Accoutrements?
have to remember, he went through phases, though.
Yeah.
If you remember, he went through a Western phase when he was riding horses on and he would come in wearing blue jeans, his button-up shirt, and then a vest over the top of it. He did that for a
And a
while.
bolo tie.
I don't know if I ever saw a bolo tie, but that's a
Cowboy hat?
possibility.
Man, did he have the cowboy hat too?
He did.
He did.
Wow.
I never saw that phase there.
Yes, he had that phase.
Yeah.
And then when we'd work winter interdiction, he would come through and come in uniform, which
Right.
was interesting to see him come out working traffic at this point in his career.
Right.
So
So what are you doing now? You fully retired. You worked the last year and a half, 2 years with APOST, which is the Alabama Peace Officer Standard and Training Commission, which regulates law enforcement officers in the state of Alabama, their training, their certifications, and also conducts some investigations into certain aspects of law enforcement agencies, right?
yes, A-Post was one of those careers that, most chiefs and most officers know when you hear A-Post, your ears go up and you wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that as an investigator there, you're looking into the certifications of the officers that are coming through, because A-Post doesn't get those, hey, you did a great job.
Right.
They get those notifications that there's been an arrest made. There's a character issue that we need to look into. You're also controlling the applicants that are going through a total of 9 to 10 different academies that are actually sponsored by the state.
Scattered around the state.
Yes.
Right.
And you're going through and checking all of their files, all of their applications. And, the investigators' duties up there are to make certain that we keep the right people in law enforcement in the state.
Right. People, officers that have integrity. And that's one of the things we wanted to cover today is integrity in law enforcement and what you're seeing in some of the courses that you're teaching also. Now, another interesting, I don't know if you were involved in that Brookside investigation?
I spent a few days in Brookside.
That was a whole law enforcement agency, and not only the agency, but their actual judicial system.
Yes.
Can you give a brief overview of that, or are you allowed to talk about any of that right now?
So, Brookside was pretty much a policing for money
Right.
deal that was adopted that somehow got ingrained in the way the workings of the city. And it spread further than the police department. And now several of those, well, actually one of those persons or two of those persons that were involved in it are no longer in law enforcement and will probably never be back in law enforcement, at least not in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, which would be a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. I know one of them still has a charge pending over in Covington or Conecuh County.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, with that being said, I know they've changed the ways that they were doing things there in Brookside for the better. They brought in another chief that was retired from another agency, and last I had saw and heard that things were going pretty smoothly and getting things back to where they needed to be.
Yeah.
How many investigators does the state or APOST have actually?
A-Post has, whenever I left, we had a couple of full-time investigators and they had a couple of part-time investigators.
So it's safe to say for everybody out there that you hear it a lot in outside of the law enforcement circles that all cops are corrupt. I'm sorry, I hear that quite often. It sounds like it's safe to say, and I already knew this, that APOST does a pretty good job of policing the police to make sure that we keep the standards where they need to be.
And that's probably the easiest way to put it, is that we are, or we're policing the police, making certain that those cases that need to be seen come in front of the commission, and let the commission come through and make a final determination on, do you still need to be a police officer or not? The integrity of the commission is, we've got great law enforcement leaders throughout the state, and they're part of the commission. And there's just no other way to make sure that integrity is done if you don't have somebody that has integrity with the commission itself.
Yeah, that's like, you need to have that first, yeah.
Well, I know Chief Alan Benefield, who was the former chief of Ozark PD, and he's been the executive secretary of APOS for now 20-something years at least.
Probably 25 to 30.
Yeah, and
That's after he retired.
yeah. And Alan Benefield is he's a no-nonsense, old-school cop.
Yes.
Which is along the same lines I like to follow too, But he's not going to put up with anything that's not professional and not ethical.
No, not at all. There are several things that I have saw come through the agency while I was there. It's like, yeah, that's not going to happen in the state of Alabama.
Well, an interesting thought that, in my young career, and a lot of guys feel the same way, you didn't want to look at yourself as, policing the police. You didn't want to be that guy that had to.
Nobody wants to be IA.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be IA. But
Yeah.
as you move through, and tell me if I'm wrong, tell me what your opinion is on this. As you move through, to me, that seems like it's a really important task, is keeping the guys that are in the street, out in the field, doing the job, making sure that there is that, how would I put it, that
that atmosphere.
that
Toxicity.
that, keeping that away from law enforcement. So to me, it seems like in that position, policing the police, that's a really, we don't like it, but it's necessary, and it's a really important position.
Exactly. You can reference back to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all those national events. And, throughout all of that, what happened to the name of law enforcement? It became besmirched. And, instead of being the good guys, we became the evil guys. Mm-hmm. If we don't have the policies and the standards to keep in the great people, what happens to our reputation from there? So, yes, policing the police is a necessity.
Yeah.
And APOST has the people in place to make certain that when they get notified of it and they know about the events going on, they follow through and they do the checks and balances, making certain that they're doing the right thing.
So what does that process actually look like? Like that you would go in and would you just do regular check-ins, or do you only do follow-up after something's happened to investigate?
So a lot of time at APOST, you've got investigators that are spending daily time on the internet looking for those arrests throughout the state of Alabama or anywhere else. If we've had an Alabama officer that was arrested, they're going through daily and looking, and then they start a case file. As that case file comes through, they track those cases that are going on and sees what happened at the end of the case. If they pled guilty to a felony, if they even pleaded down so they could get a plea bargain.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They still pled to, in effect, what was going on. Mm-hmm. And that's still, as far as APOS is concerned, it's still a conviction.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So, it sounds like it's not necessarily anything that somebody has to bring to your attention. You guys are actively looking for.
Yes.
I say you guys when you were in there.
You
guys were actively looking for those, what we would consider a violation,
right?
Of the standard and training.
Yes, and like I say, you've got your administrative rules also that when you start going through and talking with investigators and all this, there's certain things that happen that I can't go into a whole lot of, but there's certain things that if they happen in the wrong or the incorrect ways, there's certain avenues that the commission can go through and still do something that sometimes it needs to be done for the integrity of the actual
The bottom line is not everybody can hold the badge, and not everybody should.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The one thing about departments, and they don't understand or they don't remember sometimes, is that when an officer's arrested, there's 3 notifications that should wind up going to post. That's the arresting agency is supposed to notify post of the arrest. The home agency where that officer's employed is supposed to notify a post of the arrest. And actually the officer themselves is supposed to notify.
How often does that happen?
Very rarely. I saw it happen once while I was there.
The officer's supposed to notify?
Yes. There's supposed to be a trifold.
Who are they notifying? They just notify their family or what?
No.
They're supposed to notify.
A post.
A-post,
A post.
yes.
Oh,
They've been
okay.
arrested and they've been involved in this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
And
got you.
that way there's threefold ways that APO should have.
And you're saying like that. So that's funny though, because it's like you're putting it, it's a good thing that it's a threefold way, but that last one, it's like you're expecting the person to have integrity to contact APOS.
Exactly.
That just lacked integrity.
And I'm not, this is not to, be sarcastic towards you, but police officers are supposed to have integrity.
They are, exactly.
they're
And so
supposed
that's
to do
kind
that.
of like a filter where you say,
Yes.
this man sort of would, or this person would be kind of damning themselves if they don't do that in a sense.
Well, and it goes back to, we're talking about integrity. The integrity starts as soon as those officer candidates fill out an application.
Do they lie on the application?
They lie on an application. They don't put
my
tickets
goodness.
that they have. They don't put arrests that they had.
Thinking
they're-
nobody will find out. This
Exactly.
was 12 years ago.
But that's the whole, it's like,
Whatever
that's
it is.
eight, but that's the people. That just doesn't
right.
make sense to me.
And
Yeah,
you know,
that's the
that-
first. That's the first test of integrity.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And you would be surprised about how many people don't have the integrity to fill out an application the way it should be.
And put accurate information on it.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, so not only is APOS tasked with, okay, if it's a criminal matter involving a police officer, you deal with a lot of ethical matters as well.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the process for that?
Same as it goes through, we have chiefs or sheriffs or corrections. And like I say, that's the one other option that a lot of people don't think about. But state corrections officers fall under APOS. Your
It's
regular
a different certification. That's all.
different certification, very similar in length and type of academy they go through, but a little bit different certification. But like I say, with that being said, the application process for corrections, the application process for law enforcement, they all start with the same process of the integrity. Here's where we start, and then we build from there. Talking about the ethics, that goes into a character review, and then we've got to have a request from that person in charge, that chief, that sheriff, that corrections warden. Hey, we think we may have an issue going on with this person. Here's where it's stemming from. And then that's when actual APOS goes through and starts a longer, definitely more descript process of trying to follow through and see if that person has anything that ethically is something and morally is something that they shouldn't be doing in law enforcement or not.
And people don't need to get this confused. APOS does not act as an internal affairs
No.
division for every individual agency in the state of Alabama. That would be, first of all, it'd be impossible to do because there's so many. Was there about 700 PDs in the
Yes.
state?
How many
67 sheriff's offices.
67?
Then you got all your university police, your college police,
Airport police.
airport police. You got
Tribal police.
Yeah.
You've got so many different agencies.
How many tribal police agencies do we have in the state?
Okay, wait, what's a tribal? What's
Indian.
Indian.
Oh,
Native
okay.
American.
Porch
Oh, I
Creek.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Porch Creek, and then, that's it. They've
That's it, I
got
think, yeah.
two or three different locations throughout the
Yeah.
state. They've got Atmore, they've got Wetumpka, they've got Montgomery.
Right.
And I don't know if they've got any in North Alabama or not.
And the only reason I'm asking is this is something that I've never, as long as I've done it. So the tribal police do fall under APOS.
They have to be certified.
Okay, they
yes.
have to be certified. Okay, all right.
Okay, I don't know anything about that. That's brand new to me. So, tribal police are for
That's why we do what we do. We go down these rabbit holes.
what?
They police on tribal lands owned by the Porch Creek Indians, the ones here in the state of Alabama.
Really? And so, does every state have something like that? That's like tribal police. So like not normal, but people that police us don't necessarily police Native Americans. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
They
They have
overlap.
their own
There is some
police force.
overlap there, but
Okay, look at
Yes.
it like this. So in the state of in Alabama, we'll use formerly Fort Rucker, Novacell, Fort Novacess right now, right? Novacell. Even though it's in Dale County. Is in Dale County.
It is Dale County.
Coffee.
Houston.
So even though it's inside those areas and part of the structure lies inside the municipalities and the county, the base itself has its own federal police.
DOD
agency.
police.
Yeah, DOD police.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
and they police strictly on
The federal
Federal
property.
properties.
installation.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
installation.
I got you. Okay,
the
that
same
makes more
concept.
sense. Like thinking about it that way. I thought you guys were like saying, like, that they had their own.
Oh, like if something happened and we
Yeah.
had a Native American that
Well,
they would
just
claim.
Yeah, that
Just-
you had to get the tribal police and
No,
not the.
no,
Oh, okay. That's what I was
Just
thinking.
think of Headland being an Indian reservation
Uh-huh.
or Indian tribal lands. Then you got
There would be police in that.
Police,
Yeah,
which is-
kind of like we have Henry County Police.
right. It's,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
no different. It's the same governmental entity.
I got it now.
Jurisdiction.
Okay, that makes more
And
sense.
they try to stay on their own property to do
Yeah.
their police, or within their jurisdiction.
Oh, okay.
You know, for instance, another rabbit hole, airport. Let's say Dothan Airport owned property in North Alabama. Well, the Dothan Airport Police would have jurisdiction of the property here in Dale County, but they'd also have jurisdiction on that property in North Alabama. That's the way the state rules and regulations were written up for airport authorities whenever they created the rules and regulations for them. So.
Okay, got it.
But, it's like going back to Eric's thing a little while ago where he was talking about, hey, as a young cop, you never want to be IA or, that kind of thing. But I'll tell you what, the further you go up in the chain, especially when you get to a police chief or a sheriff's position, you want a good internal affairs officer working in your agency or multiple investigators working in your agency because you want to be accountable to the public that you are truly policing the police. And it's never a pleasurable thing as a chief or a sheriff to fire someone, to take their livelihood away from them, And then a post, on the other hand, they take their certification, and in Alabama, there's, 700 PDs or so and 67 sheriff's offices. And the way recruiting and retention is now, you get fired from one place, you're going to get hired as a cop somewhere.
Oh, yeah, there's job security.
There's
out there
job
right now.
security somewhere. But
doubt.
if you do something so egregious, then APOS is going to pull your certification, which means that you cannot be a law enforcement officer anywhere for any agency in the state of Alabama.
But Andy, honestly, at this point now, having been in the positions that I was in, I don't want guys that we have to police.
I don't either.
You want your
I'd rather
agency-
do it myself.
Yeah, you
In a
want your
perfect world.
agency to be clean.
But there are so many agencies that are hurting so bad that they're almost willing to take those warm bodies.
I've seen
They're
them
hiring people just to fill
left and
slots.
right. I've seen it all over the place.
not
And
worth it.
I talked to one chief while I was still with Post, and he and I had been friends when I was chief. But we got to talking. I said, "How short are you?" He said, "I'm supposed to have 70." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I've got 35." I said,
Wow.
"You can't police your city with that." He said, "Not effectively." He said, "All we're doing is reacting. That's it."
But
No
do you
proactivity.
want to police your city with 35? So
Good
you got
officers.
35 good cops and 35 bad cops. Do you want to police it with those 35 bad cops or marginal cops?
That's the old adage that I would rather go, downstream with 5 studs versus 100.
7.
Oh, 7 studs.
7
yeah.
studs and 100,
Yeah, 7
100
studs
turds.
versus 100 turds. Yeah.
Charlie Beckwith,
Charlie
the
Beckwith,
creator of
that's
Delta,
it.
said
I read that the
said,
other day. It was
I'd rather go his. Well, I'll paraphrase it. His I'd rather go up the river with 7 studs and 100 turds.
Yeah, he didn't.
That's
He didn't
exactly what
say
said.
turds. so-
Agreed.
But you get the point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I
Eric said he
agree.
was
I agree
short.
with him.
Yeah.
I agree with him.
Yeah, that's good.
So, talking about what we're talking about, retention and everything else, getting into the leadership aspect of things, what do you see? Andy and I have talked about this a lot on here as far as what we see in the upcoming generations. And you can use law enforcement, fire, military, civilian world, anything. What do you see in the generations that are coming up as far as work ethic, leadership qualities?
And talk about that one course that directly relates to this that you teach.
So, first off, I want to address another issue. We've got people talking about the candidate pool and the selection process. Well, from what I have seen and talked to from Post recently is that the good thing about it is our recruiting is working. We've actually got more applicants coming into the academies than we have in the last couple of years. Our numbers are rising. So that's a positive thing for law enforcement. And, when we're saying that, we know that the investigators are doing, and also the personnel that are processing paperwork, are seeing the better applicants that are coming in. But when it comes up to the generations, pretty much the ones that we've got actually working right now currently are the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the Zennials. Our Zennials are...
What is that?
The Zennials are the ones that...
Gen Z.
The Gen Z.
Gen Z. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No. You're good. You're good. I was like, I
Where
feel
does
like
that put
that's
you and me?
probably.
What are we?
Zennials,
I think
He actually would probably be a boomer.
Yeah.
You're 50.
Yeah. I'm 56. Yeah.
Actually, you'll
Yeah,
probably be
I
a
am.
Gen X.
he's a
also.
Gen X. Yeah, he's an Xer.
So, but there's different years and age group. Your Gen Z or anywhere from, depending on which one you're looking at, is 1997 or 2000 and back. I've got my kids I've got one of each. Depending on how you look at it. But
God bless you.
I know. Well, actually, the work ethic right now I see coming up in law enforcement, our Gen Z have a better work ethic a lot of times than the millennials do. Now, they're still just as aggravating sometimes as the millennials, but they're more pro-government. They're also more pro-community. Our millennials came up and they saw everything that was going on that they didn't agree with. For instance, now my daughter, when she was 18 and 20, folks, she voted regularly. When the election came up, she went and voted, and she was proud to do it. But then all of a sudden, everything politically came up, and it was not to her liking and wasn't to her thing. Well, guess what?
She stopped.
She stopped voting. She didn't want to participate in something that was not the way that she wanted, but she didn't know how to get there. Mm-hmm. Our younger generation, the Gen Zs, have figured out, well, for us to change it, we've got to get back involved in it. Both generations are talented when it comes to computers, when it comes to, we always call them digital.
What are you, Thomas?
I'm a millennial.
Are you like,
Hi, it's me. I'm the
29
problem.
or
It's
30
me.
or something?
What was that?
Or are you like 29
30.
or 30?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm 30. So
That's why we
1990.
have him on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could all be his daddy.
Oh, absolutely. But they're digital natives.
Yeah.
They've never
Well, they
been in
grew
a
up that
time
way.
frame. Exactly. They grew up that way. They've never been without internet. They've never been without.
I
some
grew
type
up
of
on
cell-
DSL. I mean, right? Wait,
Yeah.
DSL?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it was called. Anyway, but
I
so
grew
I
up
mean
on
that's
playing with a stick in the yard.
close,
That's what I
right?
But I've also seen that some of those that they lack, a lot of them lack interpersonal communication skills
Yes.
because they don't have to talk to people. How many kids today text a girl and ask her out on a date? When all of us, we had to call a girl's house and probably talk to her daddy or her mother before we and ask for her before we actually.
I need to
asked
make a
for
confession.
date, or we had to do
I
it
broke
in
up with a
person.
girl through email once.
Oh my God! Email.
That is so sad, man.
I'm sorry.
So
That's hilarious.
I'm just, for all you guys out there,
I'm like Derek
Learn from my
Clower. I don't
mistakes.
know if I'd have told that.
don't do that. I mean, I'm just saying, like
Hey,
when you're
I'm
young
proud of you. I'm
and
proud
email
of you.
came out, you're-
you had the guts to sit there and tell everybody out there that. Okay, so I'm
Look,
proud.
and
I'm proud of you.
look, and that's why I said it's my confession. I think that you have face to face, which is probably the best.
Yeah.
Text message, I think, is definitely not as good at all. An email, I think, is
Yeah,
you pretty much just
Email's official.
Let me ask you. Well, it is, but
in
I had
there.
my signature on it too.
Well, let me
I
ask
can
you this:
save that and print it.
did
Phone number, email.
Did you ask for a read receipt? To make sure she actually got it? Or what?
No, I just assumed by the way
She's
she
still
looked
sitting
at me
around
the
waiting on
next
a
time
date,
I saw
waiting on a
her
phone
that.
call is what she's waiting.
So, Thomas, how did it make you feel?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was great. The email was sent, everything was done.
But these kids today, they've been so used to texting or emailing or doing something through an app, and then when you throw them in the law enforcement field, you throw them out there into the field, and you say you need to go to interview this witness, or you need to go interrogate this individual. And all they don't know how to establish rapport with either a witness or a suspect to be able to
I'm going to
interview or
use
interrogate.
an example for
You know?
that right now, and I'm gonna put a name out there of an agency. Go to Dothan PD.
Yeah,
Ride around Dothan PD, and if you see a marked patrol car sitting off in a parking lot or so, wherever you see it, look as you ride by. Look at the officer. What's he doing? His face is so far in that computer.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And being back over there for the short time that I was, I did see that a lot. They were so, and it's great. Technology is great. It's a good tool to have. But they got so technology focused that it seems like they've lost the ability to get out in the field and do the legwork.
Yeah, that's nationwide.
Which,
man.
with doing that, comes a loss of officer safety tactics and everything else.
Well, we now depend on so much technology for law enforcement.
Which I'm not knocking technology; it's good.
If it's used correctly.
Yes.
And our current generations that are the younger generations that we have, and yes, you're a younger generation,
I'm fully accepting this.
but that's how they grew up, and with that going on around them, they're used to it, and they've been so focused on the technology growing up that's what they know.
Yeah.
That their emotional intelligence itself is terrible a lot of times because they didn't have to interact in person.
Right.
They interacted via headphones and video games.
So who's to blame?
Us.
Us. I was about to say
Absolute
us
us.
because
The
we
older
didn't.
crowd, because you didn't force
We
them.
didn't keep that in check.
Yeah.
We just used, a lot of times people use that as a babysitter.
Well, no technology can take the place of the human element.
Right.
Zero.
That's good. I like that. That's good.
The
You
one
thought that up?
It's off the top of
Sometimes
my
it
head.
happens.
Just right there. It was there.
I have an epiphany every once in a while.
it just popped out.
Yeah, it just was there.
Everybody, me and Andy do bust each other's chops sometimes.
They're not quite used to me yet.
Yeah.
We'll have you on more often, and you can.
Yeah.
What are you with these younger cops, and you're doing a lot of training now, and I do some speaking to some law enforcement groups and all, but you're actually there doing the actual training. What kind of feedback are you getting from this younger generation? What are they saying? What do they want? What do they have to offer? What do they need, and how are things changing?
So, throughout my training, like I said, again, I'm going nationwide training. I also teach AU for Auburn University Montgomery here in the state a lot. But our younger generations, they're looking for the leadership. Mm-hmm. They're looking for those leaders that will help them get to the next step. Now, as current leaders, or that we have been, they're looking for those leaders that will bring them along with them. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a yes person, but they want the education to go along with it to help them be the leaders that we know they're going to be in the future. Right. Our young people, whether we like it or not, all of us are getting older. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be in law enforcement forever. I was in it for 32 years, and there comes a time where Tony Spivey, of all people, says, when I asked him when he retired, he said, "You'll know."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he was absolutely right. You'll know.
Yeah.
So what we're having to do, and what we have some people that are scared to do, they're scared to teach these younger generations how to take over.
Yeah.
And in doing so, when we're not following through, and we're not going through and helping them get to that next step, our younger generations are doing what? They're exiting, going somewhere else where they feel they're going to get that training for that next step.
It's not always about, in my opinion, this is me, but it's not always about formal leadership training either. It's more, a lot of times, about mentorship and nurturing that officer, and as cops and as former cops and as leaders in law enforcement, recognizing those who really have potential to be your next generation of leaders, and identifying them and going, "Hey, come here, kid. I see something in you, and I want to help you to get to that next level because I believe that you're going to be a good leader." And it goes back to these pools that we're hiring from today. These people keep hiring these, saying, "I got to hire somebody just to fill a position." Okay, you're creating that pool that your leadership's going to be chosen from in another 5 to 10 years. So if you're settling for substandard cops now, then you're settling for substandard leaders in the future.
Yeah.
And you're saying you're okay with that if you hire those individuals that are substandard. And they need to stop doing it.
And the terrible part about it is they're lowering their standards so they can get more people in.
And as the generations go, going off what you're saying, it gets worse and worse and worse.
It parlays itself into the next generation.
And I want to take everything you guys just said a step further. I'm a millennial. Okay, we just discussed that. I see my friends and the people I hang out with, the men. We have a longing for mentorship.
Right.
Like you said, Gen Z, I see that. I agree with that 100%. And all it takes is the person willing. So even beyond just police work, I think these generations that are coming up truly do long to be mentored. They really do want somebody to look up to and lead them in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing about it is the coaching and the mentoring. You do know how much that cost us to do?
Zero.
Absolutely. It's a matter
It
of
costs you time.
Yeah.
exactly.
That's it. And we should be investing time in the future generations anyway.
Yeah, and retired cops too. Not only people who are still in leadership position, but retired cops. And I still talk to a lot of cops, and I have some that call me, occasionally. And it's our job as retired or former law enforcement officers to also, nurture those and encourage those future generations. Because if we don't, there will be no future generation of law enforcement in this nation.
Absolutely.
Well, elaborating, is that the right word? Kind of expounding on what Thomas says. Because, Bobby, what we do want to do is we want to reach more people than just police officers and military. But
Right.
at the end of the day, when we had Pete Marco on last week, he made a really good statement. The military got it right. In teaching people how to lead, in teaching people what to do, they got it right.
Right.
And, I mean, they did. So we can all learn from that. If you're outside of the public service realm and you're in the civilian world, take everything that we're saying and apply it there. We want to reach everybody as far as, like I said, men being men again.
Yeah.
But we've got to step up as, whatever position we held, especially as men of faith, we have to step up and start the mentorship that you're talking about to lead these next people. I don't care if it's, a painter or a contractor or a salesman.
Right.
Everybody needs that mentorship. Everybody needs that person to stand up and go, you know what? Sometimes it hurts to be told that you're doing the wrong thing. It sucks. But you need people to stand up and say, that's not really what you need to be doing. Why don't I show you a better way?
So I'll expound on that just a little bit. We talk about the millennials, we talk about Gen Z, and they're not doing things the right way. They're wanting us to come in and help them become that better person, not even officer, that better person. Mm-hmm. And we do that through the coaching. We do that through the mentoring. We also do it by letting them fail every once in a while. For us to get better at something, nobody's perfect the first time they do anything. Mm-hmm. But, our kids, our younger generations, and we've talked about it a moment ago, us as parents were omnipresent parents. Man, we were part of everything they ever did. And next thing you know, they're failing. Well, no, they didn't fail. They just, they needed another try. That's part of getting better is failing. But, as we go through all of it, we've got to let them fail every once in a while so they can get better at it. And the better they get at it, the more productive they'll be and the more confident they'll be. Because
so I guess you don't believe in participation.
I was just about to ask you that. Do you feel like we're robbing them?
Trophies.
So. Do you feel like we're robbing them of that opportunity to learn from their failure by coddling them in there?
Absolutely.
In one of the leadership courses I took, and you probably went through the same one with Dr. Gwynn with the Command and Staff College, but one thing he said in there, if you want to be successful, double your failure rate.
Mm-hmm.
And what he means by that is that, again, if we don't fail, we never know that we need to improve.
You're not trying.
If we have a goal set, let's say Andy's the chief or the sheriff. Let's say he was a sheriff, and he wanted me to go do something. Well, he could tell me and micromanage and tell me exactly how he wanted it done step by step, or he gives me a task, tells me he wants it done by a certain time, and then go do it.
Yeah. I think it was Dwight D. Eisenhower that said, don't tell someone how to do something, just tell them what you want done, and they'll amaze you with their creativity.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that happen in life where somebody with a different mindset, all of us have been trained through the same academies. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Yeah. None of us police the same.
Yeah.
And the same with our people below us is that, they have a different mindset. I would tell you I wanted to go to Walmart. You might know a different way to go that's better for you, that you like better. Guess what? We both got to Walmart. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter how we got there as long as we ended and finished and accomplished that one goal.
Right.
That's what our younger generations are trying to figure out. How do I accomplish this goal and still be successful in doing it and not be...
But do you know what I see with the younger a lot of the younger generations is the give up mentality.
Yes.
And going off what you said, I wish I could remember who the quote came from, but the quote is, if you look at a successful man, you look at a man that tried one more time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
You fall down, get up.
Well,
If
it
you fall
comes
down, get up.
It comes back to that failure thing. If you can learn from your failures, right? That if you have the opportunity to get back up, but if someone's saying you didn't fall down, then you don't have an opportunity to try to get back up. You're just saying, "Oh, I didn't fall down. I don't fall down. Apparently, I'm not able to fall down."
So let's go into a training situation. Eric, I think all of us have been through simunitions training, and a lot
I
of
think
times
you shot me once, so
or twice,
or maybe twice. Yeah.
but
That's a story.
it is. But a lot of times in law enforcement training or any training, if you have something bad happen to you, they said, "All right, you're out." What does that do for your mentality as a person if something minor happens or you get involved or injured and all of a sudden somebody tells you you're out and you can't go any further? Yeah. That affects the mindset, especially in first responders.
Well, and I've seen some law enforcement trainers, and you can relate to this, is that, especially doing officer survival stuff, every situation they put you in, you got killed. Well, what does that teach you? You're probably going to get killed.
You're going to die.
Every domestic call, every traffic stop you make. But I've seen instructors like that that made it that way where they got killed. Yes, you want to teach tactics, but you don't want to teach somebody that no matter what you do, you're going to fail.
The no-win scenario.
Oh yeah,
You
so
don't
that's
want
like the
those.
other side.
Yeah,
Now-
and some of those are based upon instructors' egos.
Yes,
and that
absolutely.
never needs to be in play.
Now, sometimes do instructors need to throw in a no-win?
Yeah.
Occasionally they do.
To teach a lesson.
Exactly. But at the same time, you should always be telling them your job is to go finish the job. You can push through unless it's a large wound, unless it's a certain wound in a certain area. You can still move and you can still survive and go through to that next part that you have to do, because if you don't, somebody's got to come in behind us and finish the job.
Andy, what's the one thing that we would push in training, especially TAC team training, SWAT training? You make your entry. There's a high probability bullets are going to fly. What are you wearing? You're wearing body armor. Just because you get hit doesn't mean you're out of the fight. You keep fighting. Yes, the adrenaline's up. You need to be, relying on that. You get hit in the vest, you keep fighting. You're not down.
Right.
You've got to push through. And that's, I'm not going to say I don't see a lot of that. I see a lot of the let me give up real easy mentality nowadays.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where simulations training comes into effect. And there's a thing that we use in training called stress inoculation. I mean, it's getting people used to those bad things happening and pushing on through.
Pain is a wonderful teacher.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. That's really good. So I keep looking at this book you've got sitting here, and it says moral injury in policing, and I'm really curious as to what you're going to say about it.
I have not read it. I just got that from Andy this morning.
Oh, okay. I'm like
we're
sitting
gonna
here like,
pick Andy's
what
brain
is
on
this
that
book? That's so interesting. Sorry. So we can pick Andy's brain about that later.
That may be a day for a whole nother topic.
I thought you were
right
gonna...
there. But moral injury in policing means that when you do something wrong, you do something that's not ethical in law enforcement, then that injures you morally. It can do a couple things. It can either make you think, well, I got away with it now. I'll do something else. I'll do something else. I'll do something else that's unethical.
Yeah.
Or it can make you feel like I'm not worthy of policing, or I don't have the morals to continue policing. There's a lot of different effects there. Tim Rupp, I got to meet Tim and spent some time with him, but this is one of his books.
Okay.
He's retired San Antonio PD sergeant. As a matter of fact, I've got him on my list let's get him on the show. He's in Idaho now, but we'll get him on remotely one day.
Sorry, I didn't mean to segue into that.
That's all right. And actually, he is a police chaplain still to this day.
I think Tim might even pastor a church in Idaho too.
Yes.
Yeah, great guy, really great guy.
So I want to go into, because I keep looking at this, and Andy kind of went in there, and you put the brakes on it for a second. Leading the generations of today. That's your one of the things you teach about.
Yes. Leading generations of today is talking about the different generations that are in law enforcement and that are up and coming. Our Zennials, Gen Z, our millennials are the largest portion of our first responder workforce right now because they're the young ones that are still in here. And we've got to figure out, for all the things that the boomers and the Xers say that they're terrible, they're the trophy generation, they always ask that one question, why? That's what everybody gets mad at, is the question of why. And
Legitimate question.
it is a legitimate question. Here's what I found out through the last several years of training, though. If we answer the question with a legitimate answer to it, they're like, okay.
Not
they
just
go,
because we've done it this way for 100 years.
Exactly. If you give them a legitimate reason, a legitimate way of doing things, they accept it and they charge on. Now, at points later on, they're going to sit there and try to figure out how can we do it better.
As they should be. Everybody should always be trying to figure out how to better things.
But our older generations right now hate hearing that why. They don't want to see or hear, well, we don't want to do this. We were always taught when you were told to go do something, you went and
Done it, yeah.
You went and did it. No question, just do it. But,
Well, a lot of times I think some of the older generation hate that question because they don't know what the answer is.
Ooh.
Because they've just
Injury.
always done it that way.
Shots fired.
And the
it's a
previous
fact, though.
generation, and they've just always done it that way. But it is a legitimate question, and as a leader, why should not offend you?
oh, absolutely.
It should not be an offensive
And if
question.
it does, you should question why.
Yeah.
Before I, before
A
I
lot of whys here. you know?
Well, before I retired the first time from Ozark, of course, I was a captain over special operations, and I did all of the training, and I trained persons to come in and take my job, which is what we should all be doing anyways.
Yeah.
You know, if you're at a location and you're the top dog there, well, I should be teaching the pups behind me how to come in and protect the property, how to come in and protect everything there.
Yeah, leave a legacy. Don't hoard all the little shiny rocks, that nobody else gets to see.
Yeah, they call
absolutely.
that gatekeeping
That's
today.
right.
There's a word for that. Yeah, gatekeepers, the ones
Where
that
do you
don't
come up
want to
with
give
this
you. I don't. That's like the thing. That's really what they call people.
Well,
older
they feel
that
they're
aren't
going to
willing
hold the power.
Right.
I got to hold this
Yeah,
power.
exactly,
Well, what
exactly.
happens when you leave one day?
Exactly.
And nobody else knows. How
They don't
to do
have the
your job?
legacy in mind.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to ask you a question though. Is that okay? Or I want to make
Absolutely.
sure I don't derail your thoughts.
they're all.
I'm going to
threads
do
anyways.
exactly what you were just talking about. Why do you think that is? That generation, those generations, those people that you've been in contact with are doing that.
As far as not wanting to answer.
No.
Or the younger
As
ones?
asking why.
Well, I think they want to learn, really and truly. Our millennials want that education. They want to know, how do I get from being here, maybe it's a patrolman, to a corporal or a sergeant or a lieutenant? How do I advance myself in this organization? And the only way to do that, they know, is through their education, and that has to be asking why.
Right. Well, and I asked that because Andy was just saying, when somebody told us to do something, we just did it.
Right.
But now we have generations that aren't doing that.
The younger generations are setting boundaries. We've got to figure out and explain to them why their boundaries don't work sometimes. Sometimes they do.
That leads me down to another
Oopsie.
to another question, kind of another offshoot of this. You talk about the why, and I get that, man. That's amazing, and it's good because I want to know why I'm doing something a lot of times. And there were times that Andy go do this, Roger that. You move.
Right.
But if we're okay, I'll use it in a tactical term. We're clearing a room. Why do I do this? Why do I go this direction? Why does my trailer go this direction? Why do we do this or prior to entry? Why do we breach this way? Why? There's always a why, and there's always a reason behind it.
Correct.
And you want to know what that is. Okay, I understand it. Let me go do it. So we got that down, but here's the other thing. Which generation, along with the why, where's the entitlement coming from? Because you sat there and you said, well, they want to know why they do something so they can learn how to move up in the ranks. But what I see, and what I saw before I left the sheriff's office with Henry County was trying to hire people. You get these, young guys coming in, well, I want the job, but I don't want to work nights. I want to work Monday through Friday. Oh, and I need a new car. Oh, and I also need to be topped out salary-wise. That
Okay.
sense of entitlement, I want them to want to ask the questions. Why do we do this? Why? Give me the knowledge that I need so I can move up in the ranks. But where do we stop them from this rapid, or this thought that they have to this rapid succession to get to the top when they hadn't really earned it? That sense of entitlement that's out there.
Okay. So are you ready for it?
Yeah,
I want you to get your finger, your pointing finger.
got it.
Okay. I want to point it towards your nose,
Yeah.
and that's where it started.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason being, we talked about being an omnipresent parent. As an omnipresent parent, when we grew up, the three of us, I'm going to exclude you for just a moment.
Yeah, that's fine.
When your mom or dad put dinner on the table, what did you have for dinner?
Whatever
Whatever's on the table.
And if you didn't want it?
you went
You
hungry.
were hungry.
That's not the way that Thomas and them were necessarily raised. My kids were not raised necessarily that way. If they didn't like what they were having, guess what? They got to go through and have something different. Whether it be us cooking it or us going to get it, if they weren't going to be happy, we let them be part of the actual choices of any choices we had going on. What kind of a dog do you going to have? What kind of food do you want for dinner tonight? We let them be part of the decision on all of the decision making going on in that household. So therefore, they were included
Expect it.
and expected everything that's coming to them because they got to be part of that decision.
And they understood that was the way it was. And so they,
And now society is that same way.
Yeah.
We let them be part of so many decisions that they automatically knew they were going to be part of every decision that came up of everything they did.
yeah. And so it's like when you're coming into a job and you're like trying to interview this person and they're like, well, okay, now what I need to know is, it's like, wait a second, like you're here to get the job to work for me, like I'm not here to work for you.
Well, and then you've also still got the parents involved in those decisions. I had a candidate bring his mother in for an interview one time.
That's happened in several places.
That is an
I've heard.
automatic.
Job
Hey,
interview.
man, we appreciate it. You need to, thanks for your time. So,
Oh, absolutely. Come in for a job interview and his mother's wanting to say, I'll be right here. No, ma'am, I'll need you over here outside of there.
Oh my gosh.
Had another one come in one day. Now, what is appropriate interview for a job? What is appropriate attire?
oh, wow.
I mean, I would say a button down and probably slacks or, something nice.
Can I give you back in my
At the
day?
least,
Okay,
better
I
be
was
in
going
a-
to
better be
get
in a
to it.
suit.
I will say today, I think most people think what I'm wearing is appropriate.
Okay, and now, Eric,
Back in my day, you showed up in a suit with a tie.
yeah, even if it didn't fit, you made the effort.
So now I will say though, like law enforcement, I could see that. I could understand
Anything.
something like that.
Very
But
first-
was it
very
like
first
that
job,
with
dude.
anything?
Very
That was
first
like,
job
I'm
I
going to
ever
go work
had.
at the ice cream parlor. I'm going
I
suit and
worked
tie.
for
Yes.
Wow,
what was it?
okay,
The
yeah.
sporting goods place in the mall. Back in the day, it was Olympia when it first started. Olympia Sporting Goods.
Okay.
I worked for Olympia Sporting Goods when I was 16. I showed up for my interview in a suit. That was what. I mean,
Okay.
that's, everybody said, man, you
Now,
go to your interview in a suit.
You're used to this, so I'm going to give some pushback probably, just a little bit. In the 1920s, everybody wore a suit and tie everywhere.
Right.
Are
yeah.
you saying I was born in the 20s?
Well, hey, if the shoe fits, I'm just kidding. No, but everybody wore a suit and tie. You know what I mean? So how much of that is just that now we don't, the culture sort of shifted in a different direction, because people used to also, I mean, we can go biblical, head coverings and things like that, so how much of that is cultural? Because I think when that shifts, right, we're going to get upset about it because there are people that didn't do it that way.
I think sometimes it's culture, but I think what Bobby's fixing to get to is there is a minimum standard.
Yeah,
go ahead,
and
go ahead
that's
tell
what-
us. Go ahead and tell us
let's
what
talk about that.
Professionalism is
showed up in.
professionalism.
Yeah.
What did it show up in?
I had a guy came up for his interview, pair of shorts, dirty T-shirt. I looked at him, I said, and I was actually not sitting on the board for this one. I looked, I said, "Are you lost?" He said, "Excuse me." I said, "Are you lost?" He says, "What do you mean?" "No, I'm here for an interview." I said, "Not dressed like that, you're not." I said, "I think y'all's interview is concluded because he will not go any further in this one."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "What?" I said, "No." I said, "You go find appropriate clothes to wear to an interview process, and they might see you again." Our younger generation still has to understand that, yes, culture has changed. Culture is still changing and evolving as we go through, but they've got to also understand there has to be some type of professionalism that comes along with it. And professionalism is how you present yourself in the very beginning. You only have one time to make a first impression.
Yeah, so you better do your best.
Exactly. If I see a person that came in with a suit that you could obviously tell it was not his suit, it was oversized, but he made that effort.
He's trying.
that gave me a lot better idea of that person than the one that came in a pair of shorts and a dirty T-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, they made an effort to come in and dress appropriately. They wanted to make that first impression. Our young people have to know first impressions are still very, very important in the business world.
Yeah. And I'm going to say something really quick to our listeners and our watchers, our viewers. The irony is not lost on me that we are all sitting here in shirts and jeans. And to some of you that are watching, this might be your first time watching this, making a first impression. So the irony is not lost on us. We are not sitting here saying that you have to be perfect and you have to dress great. You have to do these things. What we're talking about specifically is in a business moment where your money is on the line. You're trying to get a job. You're trying to make a really good first impression. So this person hires you. You know, that's
Comes down
totally
to
different.
you're trying to get them to choose you.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Dress to impress.
Right.
Yeah.
Yesterday
Stand
before I ever came up here, I actually texted Andy. I said, "Hey, what do I need to wear?" He said, "Casual." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, polo." He said, "You'll be the only one wearing one." I said, "Okay."
All right. So I know I said this before, but see, Andy tried to show us up last week. You know,
I had somewhere else to go last
yeah,
week,
whatever.
so.
He wanted to look good. He
I
got
think
all
we just gotta
shaved
talk
and
about
wore
it,
a
yeah.
blazer, you know. So
Yeah.
makes me feel bad, but I'm still in a sweatshirt.
Right. And so in this environment, we're like, you know, we're going to be casual. But yeah. So with that, that's a totally different thing. We're talking about business, going in, having an interview with somebody, trying to get them to choose you.
Absolutely.
And if you're going in there looking like you could care less if they chose you, that's a totally different.
You know, next week I'm coming in a tuxedo. You know, that's what I'm doing.
I
So
want to see it.
Yeah.
it's going to be really, really tight because I don't care the one I've got. So won't fit no more.
But, you know, we've got to teach our young, and that's the one thing our older generation have to do is teach our young people how to come in and do things.
Yeah.
To and including coming in for an interview, teach them what's appropriate, what's not for our age group, and then let them adjust it to the culture that's going on currently.
Caveat to that, and this is something that we would have to figure out as, you know, the elders, whatever you want to call us, the leadership of yesterday, whatever. We got to figure out how to get them to listen to us. And that's another challenge in and of itself.
It is. But, you know, if they have a leader that they like, they have a tendency to want to do the things they want to do. You know, you've got your nudge theories and everything else when it comes to business, that your laws are reciprocity. If I do something good for you, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Something good for
you.
them. Yeah.
And the same goes back to association, scarcity, you know, all the different laws in business that come along. The one thing about our kids, again, we know they're looking for leaders. If they like our leadership style, guess what? They're going to try to emulate it. They're going to try to make us happy, and in turn, us make them happy. Again, we've talked about it. They're looking for the leadership. They're looking for the opportunities to become better.
I want to ask you another question about that then.
Okay.
So this, I think, is going to be really practical for some people. But what do you see? Obviously, we all respond to leadership differently, like different types of leadership. But what do you see as like the catch-all kind of leader that people seem to respond to the most, and like that these younger generations seem to want?
So, you know, your leadership has several different styles, and a good leader is going to vary between every style there is, and he's going to adjust to those moments. You've got one, we talked about Chief Benefield earlier, very authoritative. It was his way or the highway there for a long period of time because that's respectful.
Old school.
Exactly, old school. Then you wind up with the delegative. They're starting to delegate some of their duties, but in doing some of the delegation, what are they doing for their officers underneath them?
Yeah. They're creating future leaders.
Exactly. They're creating that person that has the ability to come out and do certain jobs and then, you know, and have a good end result. And that leader's continuing to help them build themselves. So, you know, then you've got the participative leader. He's one that wants everybody's input in certain things, and he lets them give their input towards whatever decision that may need to be done. In certain situations, that's a good thing. In other situations, the participative one is not one that has to be done sometime because of time constraints, safety restraints, whatever it may be. But, you know, a leader shifts between all different styles of leadership to that situation that's currently going on around them.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really helpful. in that, because I think there's a lot of times people try to just be that one type of leader, the servant leader or the participative leader, like you were talking about. And it's like, it's important for us to remember what you just said, is that it's not a one size fits all. You've got to look at a situation, assess what's going on and say what kind of leadership is going to fit best to handle this situation. Because I think in every form of leadership you just said, there's a con that could cause people to fail and not be good leaders. If you delegate too much and don't give enough information, like people are just going to, where there's no vision, the people perish. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that kind of thing, they're going to run with it. And you could just go through each thing and see why it could be bad if you did that all the time.
Well, and then, you've got the other one that doesn't give enough information. Then you've got those that micromanage. Who in the world wants to be micromanaged and told step by step every little thing to the point of it has to be done this minute, this hour?
Right.
Nobody wants to be micromanaged. So like I say, you as a leader have to adjust your style.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to.
Is it important to know the person too that you're leading?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Know your person, also the different generations you're leading. Again, I know with Eric and Andy, I can tell them to go do something, and guess what? They're going to go do it. Mm-hmm. The next generation, the millennials, I'll have to give them a little nudge and tell them, hey, here's why I need it done a certain way. And the same thing goes with your Gen Z. They want to know why also.
Yeah.
And again, it's the leadership that they're looking for. Leadership back in the old day was all about authority. Mm-hmm. Leadership today is about influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I have a good influence on you, you're going to want to do what I ask you to do.
Right.
Because it's a healthy respect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because what makes a good leader, it's not necessarily that it's somebody that takes authority. A good leader is just someone people follow. Like you're not a good leader if people aren't willing to follow you.
The question is why are they following you?
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
the first thing, and I say this in a lot of my presentations, the first factor that's going to make you a good leader, first of all, you've got to love your people. You got to love your people. You've got to have compassion for your employees. You've got to care for them. They've got to know that you care for them. Now, you're going to have employees, and especially the bigger your agency or the bigger your organization, you have employees that maybe you don't particularly care for their personality or their lifestyle or whatever the case may be. You still have got to let them know that you love them and you care for them, and that your leadership, you want your leadership to reflect that. You're going to have your small group of core people. Like they say, 10% of the people do 90% of the work. That's true in about any organization. You're going to have that core group. Then you're going to have your group out there that comes to work and they work hard every single day and they do their job. And then you're going to have that other group out there that comes and they do just enough to get by. But you've got to love and have compassion for each one of those different types of employees. And you've got to encourage them. They've got to know that you care for them.
And that caring for them, that affirmation can come in all kinds of little things. Celebrating the milestones, work anniversaries, birthdays. It can come in and celebrating their anniversaries from the birth of a child. So many different things that come along with that.
Or maybe just an attaboy every now and then.
Absolutely.
Right. A personal attaboy. I mean, anybody can sit down and generate an email, but a personal, when that individual comes into work at night or is getting off that next morning, and you know of something good that they've done, you might want to write them a formal letter to put in their file also. Like, hey, Bobby, I heard about that arrest you made last night.
Good job.
We cleared up about 15 burglaries on that arrest. Great job.
And us older guys, we didn't do that a lot. Yeah. We didn't receive those.
We expected you to do your job.
That's what you're supposed to do,
And,
goes a long way, though.
Oh, absolutely. That attaboy will get them to, I use this term always, is buy in. They'll buy into your vision of what you have going on.
Yeah. They can't wait to get back to work on the next shift and do something else good.
Absolutely. The other thing that we talked about, some of the characteristics of a leader, was integrity. Throughout my classes, I always ask, I said, what do you see? What would you like to see in a leader? And I gave it to Andy. One was selfless service. Taking care of your guys.
Selfless versus selfish.
Absolutely. When I was at the airport as a chief and when I was with Ozark still, folks, I would bring in donuts or pizza or whatever once every so often just to make them say, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. They also wanted courageousness from their leader. They had the courage to make the decisions that need to be made. Multitasking, compassionate, we've talked about. Spiritual, that's one that we get away from. We don't think that we should be mentioning God anymore in all of what we do, but He's part of everything we do.
Exactly.
So, we're looking for those spiritual leaders that are leading through integrity, they're leading through the honesty.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because we can, we beat leadership on this podcast a lot,
Right.
Because we want to inspire people to step up and do that. But you kind of mentioned the spiritual side of things. So as you've gone through your career, I want to kind of take that opportunity to move into this. How has faith played out in your career?
How's it affected what you've done?
Yeah,
in your
how's it
career?
affected you and the product that you've put out there so much?
I was brought up in the church growing up and got away from it. Not got away from it in a bad, negative type of way, but got away from it. I wasn't doing it on a regular basis. But there's always been the faith in knowing that God was a part of everything that we do. All we've got to do is look for Him and see what's going on around us. There's signs for us every day of what we should be doing. And He continued throughout my entire career of I was in the right place at the right time on so many occasions it wasn't even funny. And there are times where throughout my life I've questioned, why did this happen in this way? But, it's a matter of continuing to have the faith and knowing that it's not our timing on anything that happens, it's His timing and what He wants us to do. I've heard every one of us in the room here say it before, but our books are already written. It's just a matter of what chapter we're in at that point in time. He knew us while we were in the womb. Throughout my time in law enforcement, He's been a major part of every decision that was made. And I still fail Him every day.
So it sounds like, I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I was going to make a statement, and this has been asked by people throughout generations of law enforcement, and just get your reaction to this statement. Some people say, how can you be a Christian and be a cop? What would be your answer to that?
The angels and everything else were part of protecting us, humankind and all this. I think personally throughout all this, your law enforcement officers are out here giving selflessly, because every one of us in this room would give our lives to protect somebody else. That part of us is part of the protection of God. That how many times should you have died in your calling?
Quite a few.
Quite a few, yeah.
I think we've been put here and we've been protected throughout many situations that we would, as a regular public person, would have never been involved in.
Right.
I think there's been that armor put around us. And in some of the books I've read here recently, they equated a law enforcement officer to a knight, where he was knighted from God Himself to be part of protecting the flock around him.
That's cool.
I think, Andy, to answer that, I know we're talking to Bobby, but to answer that, I think the question can be, how can you be a cop and not be a Christian?
That's my response there, because we law enforcement officers see the worst of the worst. You see people with no hope. You see people that have been killed. You see people who have had their children killed. You see people on just at the worst day of their life. The worst things have happened to them. To us, it becomes routine because it's the things that, as a law enforcement officer, you see every single day. But we see that worst part. And how can you continue on every single day coming in and working a shift and seeing those things over and over and over again and not have faith in God and not having faith that there is hope for people?
Yeah.
There is hope. There is only one hope for people and one cure for all of their ills, for all of their crimes, for all of their bad days that they're having, for all of their woes, and that's Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Absolutely.
There's two words that I hate to hear from anybody that are describing their situation. The first one is hopeless and helpless.
Right.
Those two words, when you start hearing them from whether it be our fellow officers or the public in itself, they're at that point to where they're ready to give up.
Yeah.
You know, that's the key words that I talk when we talk about officer wellness. And if we talk about officer suicides, when I start hearing those two words, I truly become concerned and wonder, how do we get them away from that? But God has sat there and he's tendered all of our hearts in law enforcement to the point where he helps us get through all of these evils and bad situations we've seen throughout our careers.
So it sounds like, I mean, you said that you kind of fell away a little bit, not in a bad way, you said, but you know, you kind of fell away, not practicing your faith as much as you should have.
Right.
And that does happen, you know,
If we let it,
if we let it happen.
God's always there. We're the ones
Andy,
that are not.
absolutely.
you and I both know that we did that,
Yeah.
you know, but you find your way back, you know.
Right.
So it sounds like you've found your way back at this stage in your life now into, you know, the regular practice of your faith.
Right.
Do you use that in any of your teachings, any of your presentations? And we talked about this prior to starting recording. You know, we discussed and I like the way you put it. I'd like for you to bring that out, you know, because I made the statement. Well, how do you do that? We should do that. Don't take me wrong. We should put God and Christ in everything. But you know, nowadays it's we have separation of church and state. But I think people take that the wrong way. You said you do use that in your presentations.
Yes, there are some scripture in most every presentation that I do. And if it's nothing but to address a certain part in that actual part of the training itself. You know, the first time I did it was actually with some Chiefs training up in Jacksonville, Alabama. And afterwards I had a couple of people came up and says, "You can't do that." And I said, "I did do that." They said,
Did you say why?
But they looked at me, and I had several others afterwards says, "You know, that's been needed. That needs to be a part of our training and the information that's put out to all of the officers, whether it be chiefs, our young people coming in. We need to get that back into the training so they can understand that we still depend on God for everything in our lives." And
the Bible is the basis for all laws that we now have.
absolutely.
I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
That basis.
You know, reading the Bible, I've read it through in my later years from front to rear, trying to understand all of it.
Good luck.
Well, and what I found out is it changes for every time you read it. It goes
It's something
forward.
new.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, guys.
Just real quick, because we did touch on that, the separation of church and state. Can you put it the way you put it before we started, Andy?
Well, government cannot grant us any rights. Okay, our rights, our unalienable rights, are granted by God and God only. The government cannot take any of our rights. The Constitution, people have a misconception about the Constitution that it gives us some rights. The Constitution actually prohibits the government or limits the government of our country from infringing upon our rights. Now, everybody says, you got, First Amendment, you got separation of church and state. What the First Amendment actually does is it prohibits the United States government from being a theistic, or how do we say it, Thomas? A theistic government.
Saying that we have to practice a certain way.
Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever is the official religion of this country, and you actually have to practice this religion.
Yeah.
That's what the First Amendment says.
Right.
It doesn't prohibit us as individuals from exercising our freedom of religion
And
and to
that's
practice
so
what we want to
important and
practice.
good what you said. And that when you first said that the first time, I think you said that before on another podcast, and that just, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I needed to know. And I think that's what most people need to know for sure about
People,
Constitution.
if you're a citizen of the United States, you need to study the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, First 10 Amendments. Study those Bill of Rights. You can probably get a free copy of the Constitution. I mean, they're online.
Pocket
you can look it up.
constitutions.
But a lot of people, and when I was sheriff, man, I can't tell you how many of those pocket constitutions, and I gave them out to all my deputies and a bunch of local police officers and people to read and study, and that's the main thing about law enforcement. A lot of times our job is not as much about arresting someone or putting somebody in jail or writing a ticket, but it's about protecting those rights guaranteed to citizens under the United States Constitution.
And a lot of that comes with behavior modification. That's our other job, is to make sure that the confirmation and the modification, adjust to our Constitution, adjust to our Bill of Rights, adjust to our actual laws that we live by every day.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question, and this is going to go way back to earlier in our conversation, but it's a question that just keeps burning in my mind. You said that good leaders need to know the generation that they're trying to lead.
Yes.
How do they find out who the generation is? Like not saying, okay, you're a part of this generation, but how do they know more? How do they learn? Like what are the practical steps to say, here's how you learn more about your generation? Like what would you say?
So, every leader has to self-reflect. They have to go back into looking at what works with Andy, what works with Thomas, and they've got to figure out through self-reflection what works best. So, is there a set, he's a millennial, this is going to work every time?
Right.
No, there are always exceptions to every generation and what works with them and what doesn't. Sometimes it's just being direct won't work with somebody that's older, even though a lot of times it does. But, you have to know your people that are working for you and with you. And you have to go through and, all right, for instance, now I've been a firearms instructor for a long time. But, every year I knew who my weak shooters were. I remembered the tricks to help them get through and qualify each and every year. You have to do that same thing with those people that are around you. You have to understand of how well do you know them. We talked earlier about getting to know your people. That's what every leader has to do. He has to get to know those around him. Now, can I generalize Gen X? Can I generalize millennials? And can I generalize Gen Z? Yes, but if they're working for me, I've got to go through and specifically know what the personalities are.
Right, exactly. Because, I'm a millennial, but there are other people that are also millennials that have awful social skills, and so the way you talk to them, I actually can take a harsh word. Like I can take somebody saying, hey, you did that wrong. You need to straighten up. And I'll be like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
But there are other people that are like, that's the end of my world. Like my world's falling apart. You hate me, and it's like, no, that's not at all. And
you've got the older persons that can be the same way. It's like,
yeah,
oh, he got on to me. Yep, he did, because you deserved it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So that backbone being developed, right?
Yeah. A lot of leaders need to realize too, you don't have to be mad with someone to correct them. Discipline does not, necessarily involve anger.
And most of the time before I disciplined anybody, I made certain that I was okay first.
Yeah, you do not need to be emotional when you make decisions or administer discipline.
It needs, and that's part of this actual leading today's generations, talking about having a difficult conversation. None of us want to do it because, one, there's emotions tied with it, there's your livelihood tied with it, and then it gets to the point to where there's so many ways to derail it. But when you're starting to have that difficult conversation, you want to have a roadmap in front of you. Here's where I want to start it. Here's what happened. You want to be factual with what's going on when you're doing and having that part of that difficult conversation that involves everything else.
That's really good. And I feel like that could be a whole nother podcast, just talking about how to have difficult conversations with difficult people even.
Well, you need to know what you want to accomplish, what kind of behavior modification you want to make.
Right.
What's your end goal? Discipline should not be open-ended.
No.
You should have a goal.
Yeah.
And there should always be follow-up to make sure what you were wanting to discipline happened or it didn't happen.
Right, because that shows that you still care, that you really did feel like that was wrong. And
Right.
Discipline shouldn't, not, sometimes it's going to be punitive in nature.
Yes.
And other times it's not going to be punitive in nature. And sometimes even if it is punitive, if you give somebody days off, if you do it the right way, they're going to feel like, hey, I realized where I screwed up. I realized how to correct this. I got my days off now. This is some time I'm going to have to reflect,
Now,
especially when my paycheck rolls
Andy
around.
might sound Southern, but he has a large vocabulary. So can you explain what punitive is?
Well, you have
punishment.
You have corrective and punitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Well, I think of that because I think of the religious side of punitive, but, punitive, I don't think the layperson would just understand that means punishment, So,
punishment.
But yeah, so I do want to go, I want to go even further into that.
Okay.
what would you say to the generations that are being led, like my generation, Gen Z? What would you say they need to do or to respond to the leadership to be? I don't know what I'm trying to really ask. I want to know what you would say to someone like me that's struggling with leadership or struggling with being a part of a police academy or anything, that there are leaders maybe that aren't good leaders or leaders that are good leaders. Like what kind of suggestions would you give when going into the academy or anything like that?
So, the one thing about it is that just like with your military, the first thing that they have to do with a new recruit is break them down. So you're going to have to go in and understand when you're entering these academies or boot camp that you've got to go in with an open mind. You've also got to go in with the understanding that discipline is a major portion of trying to build you into the person that you want to be or that they need. We've got so many participatives. I got my trophy. People that are out there. When they go through and they get disciplined, the first thing they do is shut down. We've got to help them understand that shutting down is not going to get them to the goal where they want to be. Keep that open mindset. What is your goal? Do you want to be a chief? Do you want to be a colonel, a general? What are your goals in life, and what are you willing to do to get to those goals? The one thing I will tell anybody, young person-wise, if you have a goal, make certain that you write them down and you see them every day.
Write down the process that
Right.
you need. I wish I would have sat down and mapped out my career. I didn't map out my career. I was just having a good time.
Oh, absolutely.
And thank God things just fell into place.
Well, you had a good time right to the top.
That kind of thing. I mean, I just wanted, like I said, never about leadership. I just want to be a cop, But people need to map that out and need to have a process, and that's where the mentorship comes
Yes.
in too. Is I think in these agencies we need people, even if it's some retired people, that have some time to come in and sit down with these new cops, get them through the academy, get them back, get them with their FTO program or whatever, and sit down with them and say, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an arson investigator? Do you want to be the chief of police? Do you want to be a tactical team leader? Do you want to be a canine handler your whole career, whatever? And let's figure out how to help you to reach your goals in your career. And that's not just in law enforcement, that's any career.
Oh, absolutely. And the first word he said is what? What do you need to do, or what can you do to reach your goals? He's not telling you, I think you can do this. You've got to leave an individual up and lead him to what do you need to do to get to your goals. That goes back into that coaching and the mentoring. Now, you can give him suggestions of how you reach yours, but it has to be an ultimate attainable goal.
Yeah, you get them thinking. That's that question of like, what are you going to do?
Well,
And holding them accountable.
this old thing, is a bunch of bull that people have told their kids all year. You can be anything you want to be. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there's people that cannot be the president of the United States. They cannot be a biologist. They cannot be a mathematician. Or
I
rocket
could not be a
scientist.
musician.
Don't-
There's no way.
I agree.
know your role, know what you're actually capable of,
Yeah.
and be the very best at that. You know what an expert is? Somebody that does the basics the best.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
Figure out what you want to be an expert at and do the basics the best.
Yeah.
So, but like I say, set goals, put them in front of you, make certain they're attainable goals. And, your kids can do what they set out to do. We can do what we set out to do as long as we have when y'all put together doing this, there are certain things you had to do to get it done. And then it keeps
Bobby,
growing.
we're flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, we really are. Nobody listen to that.
Getting
Sorry.
it together though.
We're getting it together.
We're gonna edit that.
Yeah. We'll edit that.
We're getting kind of close on time right now. But Bobby, before we end up today, won't you just share? I told you to bring a couple stories. Maybe we got time for one, but
Oh, good. You're going to do this. Good.
Tell us one of the most memorable stories from your career. Something that happened to you in your career, whether it be a good story, a funny story, one that's sad, whatever the outcome was. Give us a story.
This is a mixture of funny, and also it was a mixture of when you realize that it's time for you to go home. So we were doing some officer survival training there in Ozark one time. And me and Eddie Spivey are sitting there during the traffic stop. He and I are the role players. And next thing you know, we get out and we've decided as part of our role playing. We were going to be doing wrestling and jumping and on top of each other, just fighting like crazy. And the officer was supposed to come break us up, all this good stuff. Well, we get out, and folks, we look like we are doing WWE wrestling stuff off the top of the van, on each other, beating each other in the head.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm talking, we have gone on for 30 seconds to a minute, and the officer is standing back by the van, and he's got his arm propped up on the van. And he's probably in his 60s.
Yeah.
He's propped up against the van and just watching us. Now, we are continuing to fight, literally are physically getting tired.
Mm-hmm. He hasn't intervened yet.
He has not intervened. He just still
It
sitting
seems
there.
like his train of thought was like, just let them duke it out and they'll
His
get over
thought
it.
was, let them finish
I'll
it.
tell you why in just a minute.
Well, we come up. I finally look at Eddie, and I'm on top of my tapping. Are you going to kill him or I going to kill him? He said, I thought you were. I said, I'm tired. Just go ahead. Well, we had a pistol that was tucked in a waistband. I reached in, I grabbed the pistol, and the officer's still sitting there like this, still watching us. It's every bit of 5 to 7 minutes in. Eddie and I go, can't get our breath. We finally put 5 or 6 rounds, shot the guy center mass. And like I say, again, ammunition rounds, so we know he's going to have lots and lots of bruises and remembrances of us. And it got down to the critique, and we said, why didn't you do something? He says, didn't have no backup. What you want me to do? And I said, would you do that in real life? He said, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we looked at him, and he said, well, what you expect me to do? I said, well, I expect you to do something, even if it's nothing but come, hey, get off. Whatever you got to do. He just looked at
That's
us.
hilarious.
And we said, there has to be a time when you have to figure out, are you really into this, or are you just trying to collect a paycheck?
Yeah,
I think it
that's
was
right.
I think it was Theodore Roosevelt that said this. He said, the best thing to do is well, let me back up here. Basically, the best thing to do is the right thing. The second best thing to do is the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. Period.
Right. That's good. That's really interesting.
Within a month, he went back and turned in his paperwork and retired, which is what he needed.
Oh, well, there you
Yeah.
go.
Right.
Well, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, with that mentality, it was time to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Hey, I do have a question before we close out. And this goes back to your time with A-Post.
Okay.
Investigator. Without giving names, obviously. What's one of the ones that really stood out as something that you couldn't really like, this guy did this?
Oh, there's so many.
Give me one.
Really?
Just one. Just one that really stands out.
All right, so it was probably my first investigation with A-Post, as far as major investigation. We wound up having 2 officers that were fired from a department. After they sat there, a guy had been arrested earlier that day for warrants and for lying to the cops. They put him in the cell, and he had been yelling and screaming, just causing a ruckus all day long. Nothing physical, just being loud. Mm-hmm. Well, the next thing we know is that the dispatchers, which had their jail attached to dispatch room, dispatchers started calling in the officers on night shift, which was the 2 I was investigating, and you need to do something with them. Well, they go back there the first time they walk in, he's laying in the middle of a cell on one of the cell mats, and he wouldn't move, and the officer tases him in the leg. Not
Okay.
a huge deal, trying to get compliance. Well, they go back out. After he moved off the thing, they took his blanket away and took his mat away because he wasn't being cooperative. Continued yelling, Well, they wound up coming back and putting him in a restraint chair. Over the course of the next 4 hours, they tased him because he was yelling and screaming a total of about 15 to 16 times.
Thomas, you were asking what punitive meant?
There you go.
That was definitely punitive. Involved in that one, we wound up, one of the guys was a supervisor. The other one was one that was discharging the taser. The supervisor just sat there and watched them and participated. In the end, I wound up with about 5 or 6 different people in the investigation, and I wound up revoking the certification of 3 of them, and one of them was a chief.
Yeah, their revocation of their certification was the least of their worries there.
Yeah, at that point.
They
It's called
Yeah, 'cause
civil
what
rights
could-
violation.
Yeah,
about to say,
what could happen to somebody that's
Go to
tased that
Prison.
many?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm saying what could happen to someone that's tased that many times? Is that like
Well, you have to understand how the taser
He won
works too.
$1.5 million.
Ooh, yeah.
Physically,
I
as
bet.
far as like injuries, tasers aren't an injurious weapon other than
Unless it's
you know,
used.
unless it's used. You know, there's certain things that you don't need to do or can't do or shouldn't do. Tasers are, unless there's an underlying health issue, and that's kind of rare, wouldn't you say?
Or a health issue, or maybe drug-induced issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Most of the taser injuries come from secondary injuries. So you tase somebody, they fall, they hit
Oh,
their head.
okay. Gotcha.
Taser itself doesn't
Yeah,
injure.
but just it was the overreaction to doing that, and there was no need for that.
No.
What it sounds
none
like is just the
whatsoever.
multiple times over and over for no reason.
Well, there
And-
was
and
no
then-
control to be gained. The control was already there. He was already in the
Yeah,
chair.
he was in the and that's the whole point of the taser is to gain
Words
control,
can't,
right?
Words can't hurt you.
Right.
They can hurt your feelings, but they can't hurt your
Yeah,
physically.
they were just annoyed.
Yeah.
That's a good example of police. I mean, you guys held them accountable.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know that's what the public needs to see is when those take place, and they are few and far between. I would say overall, with the number of law enforcement,
Yes, agreed.
it's a
Look at the
small
millions
percentage.
of millions of contacts
Absolutely.
per year.
It's-
It's a 1/10 of one or 1/100th.
And
of
even when they
1%
do
maybe,
occur
you know.
like that, officers are held accountable,
Yes.
and if necessary, removed or prosecuted.
They need to be.
Well, and like I say, and those two in particular were looked at being prosecuted by state
FBI,
and
yeah.
also by the FBI.
Right.
So before I retired, I know the FBI was still looking into it, and the state investigators were still looking into it as far as if they were going to do anything with it.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. That's good
That
stuff.
is very interesting.
Well, Bobby, thanks for coming today, man.
I've enjoyed it.
You look natural on here.
We enjoy
Yeah.
we enjoy it every
let me,
week.
Let me back that up.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
act natural on here. You don't look natural at all.
I'm about to say, like I said, I got a face made for radio, man.
That's why we put you way over there.
Hey, Thomas, we need to title this is "How to Grow a Beard."
Yeah, right. I know, man.
retirement.
Like it's like
Okay.
perfect. Like you got the
And
white on the
he
sides.
colors
and,
it. I
like,
think he colors
He
that
does.
part
I
right
wish
there.
I
You
could
got
say I
the
did.
V. How do you do that?
I know it's like
I mean,
perfect.
really.
God is good.
He's blessed. He's a man.
Well, that's outstanding. Well, like I said, Bobby, thank you very much. On behalf of everybody here, we appreciate it. It's really good information.
I've enjoyed it.
No, great. We've enjoyed having you
Yeah,
too, brother.
absolutely.
Hopefully you'll decide to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, we will, no doubt. If God, and He's going to keep letting us do this, I'm sure of that. I think what we like to do here on our show is we like to close out with a word of prayer, and I'm going to ask today if these two are okay with it. That Bobby,
Yeah.
you lead us in a word of prayer.
Thanks.
Put you on the spot there,
Yeah.
man.
I appreciate it. I was hoping somebody else would. Dear Lord, I thank you for us being here. Thank you for the fellowship, for the sharing of great minds and great ideas, for trying to help those others that are around us. Dear Lord, I ask that you bless all of us here to be able to do it again in the future and keep up the work that we do. Lord, help us in the faith and staying with your word and helping to share your word with those around us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.